I never thought my 4-year-old son would be the one to unravel the elaborate web of lies my mother-in-law had been weaving for 2 decades. But life has a funny way of exposing the truth, especially through the innocent hands of children. The annual Matthews family reunion was in full swing at my mother-in-law Diana's sprawling estate. She'd spent weeks preparing for it, making sure everything was perfect, from the catered food to the color-coordinated decorations that matched the professional photographer's backdrop. Diana Matthews was nothing if not meticulous about appearances. Everyone gathered around. Diana called out, her voice carrying that familiar authoritative tone she perfected over years of commanding family events. The photographer is ready for the generational photos. My husband James stood beside me, adjusting his tie, the one his mother had insisted he wear despite the summer heat. Our son Tommy fidgeted in his miniature suit, a perfect match to his father's. Diana had ordered them specially for this occasion, another one of her attempts to create the perfect family image. Margaret, dear, Diana's sugary voice made my skin crawl. Perhaps you could stand at the end. The lighting is better for the fuller figures there. She'd never forgiven me for gaining weight after Tommy's birth, just another item on her long list of my supposed failures. I bit my tongue and moves were directed, used to her subtle jabs after 6 years of marriage to her precious son. James squeezed my hand apologetically but remained silent. He never could stand up to his mother, not since his father's tragic death 20 years ago. Tommy, however, had no such reservations about defying his grandmother. He broke free from the pose formation and darted toward Diana's purse, which lay forgotten on a nearby chair. Tommy, no. Diana's voice shot up an octave. Those aren't toys. But Tommy had already pulled out her iPhone, his little fingers working with the surprising dexterity of a modern child. Look, Mommy, Grandma has pictures of my other daddy. The photographer lowered his camera. James stiffened beside me. Diana's face went white as a sheet. What do you mean, sweetheart? I asked, taking the phone from Tommy's outstretched hands. The man in the picture's with Daddy. He looks just like Daddy but older. Tommy pointed at the screen excitedly. The photo that lit up Diana's phone made my heart stop. It showed a man in his 50s, but he could have been James' twin. Same green eyes, same dimpled smile, same characteristic Matthews cleft chin. The timestamp showed the picture was taken 3 months ago. Mother? James's voice cracked. Who is that? Diana lunged for the phone, but her designer heels caught in the perfectly manicured lawn. It's nothing. Just an old photo that got mixed up in my cloud storage. But Tommy, in his innocent excitement, had already opened her text messages while playing with the phone. Deleted texts, recovered by some automatic backup, filled the screen. Messages between Diana and a contact named Robert spanning the last 5 years. Give me that phone right now. Diana's composed facade cracked completely. James took the phone from my trembling hands. I watched as his eyes scanned the messages, his face growing paler with each scroll. You told me he died, James whispered. You said he died in that car accident when I was 12. The assembled family members stood frozen, the photographer forgotten, as 20 years of carefully constructed lies began to crumble. James, darling, I can explain. Diana reached for her son, but James stepped back. Explain what, Mother? Explain how my father has been a lie all this time? How you've been meeting him behind my back? His voice rose with each question. These messages, you've been updating him about my life, about Tommy, about everything. I thought back to all the times Diana had insisted on taking Tommy for grandmother bonding. How she pitched a fit when we suggested getting him a DNA test after he was born, claiming it was an insult to the Matthews family name. How she always steered conversations away from James's father, claiming it was too painful to discuss. I did what I had to do. Diana's mask finally shattered completely. Robert was going to leave me for that woman. He was going to destroy our family. I couldn't let him take you away from me. The photographer quietly packed his equipment and slipped away. Family members began to murmur and shift uncomfortably. So you told me he was dead? James's voice was deadly quiet. You let me spend 20 years grieving for a father who was alive, who apparently wanted to be part of my life. Tommy, sensing the tension, wrapped his arms around my legs. Mommy, why is everyone angry? Did I do something bad? I knelt down to his level, hugging him close. No, baby, you didn't do anything bad. You helped uncover something very important. The truth, James said, still scrolling through the messages. You've been meeting him every month at that cafe on 5th Street, the same cafe where you insisted on having lunch with Tommy last week. Diana's perfectly manicured hands twisted together. He wanted to see his grandson. He's been begging to meet you both. But I knew if you found out the truth, you'd hate me. Hate you? James laughed bitterly. Mother, I don't even know you. More messages popped up on the screen, years of correspondence between Diana and Robert. Pictures of James at his college graduation, our wedding photos, Tommy's birth announcement. All shared secretly with a man who should have been there to experience these moments firsthand. James, please. Diana stepped forward, her expensive heels sinking into the grass. Everything I did was to protect our family. No, James's voice was firm. Everything you did was to protect yourself. Where is he now, Mother? Where's my father? Diana's silence was damning. The cafe on 5th, I said quietly, remembering all the times Diana had insisted on meeting there. Every Thursday at 2 p.m., according to these messages. Tomorrow was Thursday. James looked at his watch, then at me, then at our son, who was watching the scene unfold with wide, innocent eyes. I think it's time for us to leave. No. Diana grabbed his arm. You can't. He's not the man you think he is. I had reasons. 20 years of reasons, Mother. James pulled away from her grasp. I think I deserve the chance to hear his side of the story. As we gathered our things to leave, Tommy waved cheerfully at his grandmother, completely unaware of how his innocent discovery had just detonated a 20-year lie. Bye, Grandma. Next time can I meet my other grandpa? Diana collapsed into her expensive patio chair, her perfect family reunion in shambles around her. As we drove away, I could see her in the rearview mirror, still sitting there, surrounded by the elaborate decorations meant to showcase her perfect family. A family built on 2 decades of careful deception, undone in an instant by a 4-year-old's curiosity. James gripped the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. Tomorrow was Thursday. Tomorrow was 2 p.m. Tomorrow we would learn the truth about the man in the photos, and why Diana Matthews had gone to such lengths to keep him away from his son. The cafe on 5th Street looked exactly like it did in Diana's photos. A quaint little place with green awnings and wrought iron chairs outside. James and I sat in his parked car across the street, watching as the lunch crowd thinned out. It was 1:55 p.m. Are you sure you want me to come with you? I asked, studying my husband's tense profile. He hadn't slept last night. I'd heard him pacing, looking through old family albums until dawn. I need you there, he said quietly. You're the only real thing in my life right now. Everything else feels like a lie. Tommy was with my sister. We decided this first meeting needed to be just us. There would be time for grandfather-grandson introductions later, assuming there was anything left to salvage from this wreckage of family secrets. At exactly 2 p.m., a silver Mercedes pulled into the parking lot. The man who stepped out made James inhale sharply. Robert Matthews looked like James 20 years in the future. Same height, same walk, even the same way of checking his watch. Ready? I squeezed James's hand. He nodded, unable to speak. The bell above the cafe door chimed as we entered. Robert sat at a corner table, the same one from Diana's photos, staring into a cup of black coffee. He looked up as we approached, and his coffee cup clattered against its saucer. James, his voice was deeper than I expected, rough with emotion. I'd know you anywhere, son. James stood frozen, his hand gripping mine so tightly it hurt. 20 years of imagining his father dead, and here he was, very much alive and looking at James like he was seeing a ghost. Why? It was the only word James could manage. Robert gestured to the empty chairs. Please sit. I owe you more explanations than we have time for, but I'll start at the beginning. We sat. A waitress approached, but one look at our table's tension sent her retreating. Your mother, Robert began, then stopped, collecting himself. Diana was always intense about family. When we started having problems in our marriage, she couldn't handle the idea of divorce. It would ruin her perfect image. So you let her tell me you were dead. James's voice cracked. Robert's face crumpled. No, God no, I had no idea she'd done that until years later. She told me she told you I abandoned the family, that you wanted nothing to do with me. She had full custody, and her family had powerful lawyers. She threatened to make sure I never saw you again if I tried to contact you directly. But you've been meeting her here, I said, thinking of the texts, all these years. Robert nodded. It was her condition. She would show me photos, tell me about James's life, but only if I stayed away, only if I played by her rules. I thought it was better than nothing. At least I could see you grow up, even if it was just through pictures. You could have fought harder, James said, but his voice had lost its edge. I did, at first, but Diana had evidence, fabricated evidence, of things that would have destroyed any chance I had at custody. And then, when you were 15, she showed me a letter. What letter? A letter supposedly from you, saying you never wanted to see me again. That you believed I abandoned you. It was in your handwriting, or what looked like your handwriting. I found out years later she had your cousin practice copying it for weeks. My mind flashed to Diana's perfectly coordinated family photos, her obsession with appearances, her iron grip on every family gathering. How far would she go to maintain that control? When did you find out I thought you were dead? James asked. 5 years ago, I ran into your old high school friend at a business conference. He mentioned how well you turned out despite losing your father so young. I almost had a heart attack right there. James stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. For a moment, I thought he was going to leave, but instead he walked around the table and did something that made my heart ache. He hugged his father. Robert broke down, his shoulders shaking as he held his son for the first time in 20 years. Other cafe patrons pretended not to stare at the two grown men crying in the corner. When they finally separated, Robert wiped his eyes with a napkin. I've missed so much. Your graduation, your wedding, my grandson. Tommy, James smiled slightly. He's the one who found you, in Diana's phone. I know, she was furious about it last week. She'd been bringing him here, letting me see him from a distance. Said it was the best she could do. Robert's hands clenched. I watched my own grandson play in the park across the street, not allowed to even wave at him. That stops now, I said firmly. Both men looked at me. Tommy deserves to know his grandfather. And Diana needs help. She's sick, Robert agreed. The need to control everything, the elaborate lies, it's gotten worse over the years. Last month, she started talking about moving to another state with Tommy during summers, to protect him from bad influences. James went pale. She was planning to take our son. I think that's why she finally started letting me see Tommy from afar. She knew she'd need allies if her plans fell apart. She's always been good at keeping emergency backups. The waitress finally braved returning to our table. We ordered coffee, and as she walked away, Robert pulled out his phone. I have something for you, he said, opening his gallery. I've kept every photo Diana ever sent me of you, James. Every article about your achievements, every milestone. I know it doesn't make up for not being there, but I want you to know I never stopped loving you, never stopped wanting to be your father. As James scrolled through 20 years of collected memories, I checked my own phone. 3 missed calls from Diana and a text. Whatever he's telling you is lies. Come to the house. We need to talk about Tommy's future. I showed the message to James and Robert. Something hardened in Robert's eyes. She won't stop, he said, not unless someone stops her. James looked at the message, then at his father, then at me. I think it's time we all paid Mother a visit, together. As we stood to leave, Robert hesitated. There's one more thing you should know, about why Diana's so obsessed with Tommy's DNA test. The truth he revealed next would shake the Matthews family to its core, and make Diana's desperate need for control suddenly make terrible sense. The drive to Diana's house was silent, each of us processing Robert's revelation. The Matthews family fortune, passed down through generations, had a strict biological hair clause. Diana hadn't just been protecting her perfect family image. She'd been protecting a $30 million inheritance that rightfully belonged to her stepson. James wasn't Diana's biological child. She married my father when I was 6 months old, Robert had explained at the cafe. My first wife, your biological mother, died in childbirth. Diana adopted you legally, but the family trust specifically excludes adopted children. She's been terrified for decades that someone would discover the truth. Now, as we pulled up to the Victorian mansion, we saw Diana pacing on the front porch. She froze when she spotted Robert in the car. "How dare you bring him here?" she shrieked as we approached. "This is private property." "Is it, Mother?" James's voice was ice cold. "Or should I even call you that?" Diana's face went through a series of emotions: shock, fear, calculation, and finally, a kind of desperate rage. "Whatever he told you is lies. I raised you. I loved you when your real mother abandoned you." "My real mother died bringing me into this world," James cut her off. "You've dishonored her memory with every lie you've told. I protected you." Diana's perfectly manicured hands trembled. "That trust would have gone to Robert's gambling addict brother if anyone knew the truth. I made sure you got what you deserved. By lying to me my entire life, by keeping me from my father, by trying to control my son's DNA test because you were afraid it would expose the truth about me." Diana's eyes darted between us. "Everything I did was for this family." "No," Robert stepped forward. "Everything you did was for yourself. I found the trust documents, Diana. James was always the legal heir, adoption or not. Your lawyer confirmed it 20 years ago." The color drained from Diana's face. "What?" "The biological clause was amended in 1989. You built this entire web of lies for nothing." Diana staggered back, ripping the porch railing. No, that's not possible. I saw the documents." "You saw what your father wanted you to see," Robert said quietly. "He never trusted you with the real documents because he knew how you'd manipulate them. 2 decades of unnecessary deception, of manufactured grief, of controlling manipulation, all crumbling in the late afternoon sun." "I have proof of everything," Robert continued. "The faked death certificate, the forged letters, the falsified evidence you used to threaten me. The trust attorneys are already reviewing it all." Diana's carefully cultivated facade finally shattered completely. She sank onto the porch steps, her designer dress getting dirty for the first time I could remember. "I just wanted to keep our family perfect," she whispered. "I couldn't let anyone know I wasn't your real mother. I couldn't let them whisper about us. Instead, you let me believe my father was dead." James's voice broke. "You let me grieve for 20 years while he sat across the street watching his own grandson play. I need help, don't I?" Diana looked up, and for the first time since I'd known her, I saw genuine fear in her eyes. "Yes," I said gently, "you do." James knelt before the woman who'd raised him. "We found a treatment center in Vermont. Private, discreet. You'll get the help you need, and when you're better, we can try to build something real. No more lies." "Tommy," Diana's hand flew to her mouth. "Will I ever see him again?" "That depends on you," James said firmly, "on whether you can accept help and understand that you can't control everything. He needs a grandmother, not a puppet master." 2 days later, we watched Diana check into the treatment center, the magnificent Matthews matriarch reduced to a small figure in non-designer clothes, clutched a simple overnight bag. As we drove home, Robert asked to stop by the park where he'd watched Tommy play. My sister brought him there, and for the first time, Robert got to hug his grandson. "You look just like my daddy," Tommy exclaimed, studying Robert's face with childish wonder. "That's because I'm your daddy's daddy," Robert explained, tears in his eyes. "But Grandma said you were in heaven." "No, buddy," James knelt beside them. "Grandma was sick and said some things that weren't true. But she's getting better now, and we're all going to work on telling the truth from now on." Tommy considered this with the simple wisdom of children. "Is that why she gave me a timeout for finding the pictures in her phone?" "Yes," I smiled. "But you did the right thing. Sometimes the truth is more important than following rules." Later that night, as we looked through old family photos, real ones this time, with Robert filling in the true stories behind each one, James turned to me. "You know what's strange? I always felt something was missing, like our family photo album had holes in it. Now I realize it wasn't what was missing from the photos. It was what was missing from the truth." Robert helped Tommy climb onto his lap, and I watched 3 generations of Matthews men together, their matching green eyes and dimpled smiles telling the real story of their shared DNA. Sometimes perfect families aren't the ones with perfectly coordinated photos and carefully controlled narratives. Sometimes they're the ones brave enough to shatter the facade and build something real from the pieces. And sometimes it takes a 4-year-old with his grandmother's phone to remind us that the truth, however messy, is always more beautiful than the most perfectly crafted lie.